The second part of the story is the land uniting people. We've heard quite a lot about that intimate relationship between people and country, and that is the subject which I'd like to continue to address. I'll go back to my original slide and just point out that here in this case, I want to emphasise on the Indigenous side the importance of empathy. Empathy, I see, as the land, the moment, the voice, the word on which I would focus for the moment. Empathy in this context is from the opposite side of the street. Science provides that sense of conquest. So empathy exists in opposition to the notion of conquest, and that's a tension we need to examine in more detail. It is the key, I think, to the balance of these two sides, from the non-Indigenous to the Indigenous. The empathy on the Indigenous side is over there on the other side, the non-Indigenous, the age of reason, the science, the rational, which has been, I suppose, my contribution through my geological contribution. So I'd like then to concentrate on that contrast between what science has done in the age of reason and the development of empathy for the message from our Indigenous cousins. Despite the two-sided story, the two-sided marketing places, the science has a very important contribution to offer. Beyond the weights and the measures, science, the conclusions stir imagination, the sense of wonder that Peter Blaze Corcoran talked about, the wonder, and that is connected to what I would say the spiritual side of science. That is, not all my scientific colleagues would probably agree, but science for me is almost a religious experience. You go into contemplation, into a monastic mode to work out what the possibility of the future we seek to analyse. And in that context, the cosmic origins, the human consciousness from rock. This is the geological story, that consciousness has emerged from the rocks. The moment time began takes us back, the mystery of the Big Bang, where it's all embodied in that geological story. I'm so grateful that I lived long enough to see the mystery of the Big Bang, the sense that there was the moment of time and space began, almost beyond consciousness. So we'll go quickly to the Big Bang and a very quick summarise. At the timeline, 13.8 billion years ago, the single moment when time and space began. In terms of contemplation, that is almost beyond imagination. 14.6 billion, the first rock appeared, and here in Australia, it's in the Pilbara. 3.5 billion, again in the Pilbara, the first life, stromatolites. And amazingly, you'd never believe that 3.5 billion years later, the stromatolites reappeared. They're like a living fossil. They appeared, guess where? On stone tools out at Lake Mungo. Those stromatolites have been sent to the Mars exploration program in Sydney as an example of what scientists would look for on a lake in Mars. The parallel was out there at Lake Mungo. We don't have time to talk about this in detail, but that's an amazing connection. Of 3.5 billion years, the first life reappeared out here on the stones of Mungo Man. We press onwards. 100 million, we were joined to Antarctica, the Gondwana supercontinent. 6 to 40 million, Australia has been drifting north to meet the Asian continent. Only at 1 million, the huge change in climate from rainforests to grasslands. There was rainforest all around this country until about 1 million years ago, this first deserts, and at 300,000 years, very late in the sequence, the first evidence of what I've called here cerebral consciousness. That is the DNA of modern humanity 300,000 years ago. And that, I think, is almost a moment. It's analogous to the Big Bang, the appearance of the moment in which the cosmos became conscious of itself, that ability to contemplate. And that reverberates, as we'll hear, with Indigenous dreaming. That is the first moment when people in Africa, that's where science says we originated, the first moment when people awoke to the plants, the animals, and they asked a fundamental question of who are we, how do we relate to this geological environment where previously there was no understanding. So ask the question then, when did this actually happen? 300,000 years ago, but when did people first arrive in Australia? Now that's a question that has been frequently asked, but very difficult we don't have a final decision. People didn't leave their credit cards. There was no identification in those days. The oldest time is Kakadu, Major site, and we have there with Billy Griffiths. He was there in Billy, 2017, when the Chris Clarkson and colleagues established the evidence of 65,000 years as the longest accepted period of occupation. I believe there is evidence much closer here at Warrnambool, where geologically the evidence points to people here at 120,000 years, but that evidence has never been endorsed completely archaeologically. So that's in my mind. If the geological evidence is one thing, it lacks the critical archaeological evidence of a flake, let alone bones. So the statement then is the 65,000 years at Kakadu. The Mungo people, they settled in, we know now here at Mungo, in the Murray Basin, the granary of Australia. And it's in that context that I think we'll explore a little more about the Murray Basin, where these people actually settled, on that elevation map of the Lake Mungo and the Murray Basin. And we'll go through quickly through the concept that these stories of sea level change are preserved in a series of ridges, of arcuate ridges between Mungo and the present coast. The archaeological story, or the geological story, depends upon the ice in Antarctica, the changing level of ice, which controls the changing levels of sea level. High ice volume, if there's expanded ice volume, which takes up a lot of sea level, the shoreline is changed. If you melt the ice, the sea level rises, and it rises something like 60 metres. So we're dependent upon the climatic change in Antarctica, which is documenting and controlling what happens here in Australia. So we'll go quickly now to a ridge map. You can see we're up here at Mungo. That's a map of 77 million years ago. The coastline was up near Mungo. And we'll very quickly watch the change in sea level over the next 7 million years. 7 million. Mungo's is up there, the Willandra Lakes, and it retreats then over the period of million by million, 6 million, 5 million. We're down here, closer to the coast of 4 million. It's rising and falling. Those ridges are the record of the high sea levels over that period. We come down here near the coastal area. At 1 million years, it arrives at Narracourt. So that this is the period of major environmental change, change from rainforest to deserts, a change in aridity, which had a very powerful impact on the biological changes that led to the evolution of Homo sapiens, of people like ourselves. Those global changes, we can example in Narracourt. There's a map here from Narracourt on this coastal area, and then we're going to go through from Narracourt to the coast. There's a series of these ridges which I'll show in quick succession to illustrate the nature of the change across these last. There's about 10 shoreline ridges in that transect. We're now, Mildura is way up here somewhere. We're down by the coast. We're coming to the time for the arrival of people. Early hominids had already arrived in Java at that million years, but no modern humanity. This jigsaw map is the level of sea level change responding to ice volume changes in Antarctica. We're back here at 1 million years, coastline at Narracourt, and then there are these 10 ridges down to the present coast, spanning the last million years. And there, the major event that we're concerned is the arrival of Homo sapiens just at 300,000 years ago, that in the last couple of zigzag curves. The red point is the first appearance of humanity anywhere. So we've gone through a geological record of no people whatsoever. Suddenly you get to this red point in Africa, the first DNA, and that is putting us into a time and space context. The last 2 points there are Kakadu and Mungo. And we'll just enlarge that last cycle. My pointer's not really working very accurately, but over here, the very last cycle, we enlarge that to a map of the last sea level for the last 100,000 years, sea level at the Warrnambool site up here of this, the last high sea level. That is the site at Warrnambool. There's Kakadu and Mungo projected on the sea level curve. Kakadu about 65, Mungo about 40, glacial aridity, and then the big return of sea level that when Tasmania was reconnected to the mainland, and only at 10,000 years ago do we see the first agriculture, and 1788 doesn't even get a look in on this map. So we'll go back now briefly to the Kakadu-Mungo story, and that is where I see the green. The green is the recognition of dreaming. Now, the dreaming, as I go back to Mungo, the Mungo people were connected to country. They had their dreaming was in place 40,000 years ago. That green diagram, that green strap, points to the longevity of the dreaming. Back to 40,000, back to Billy Griffiths could explain more what happened at Kakadu, but the equivalent of connection to country was probably inherent in every conscious person's reaction to the environment, to the lands and plants, animals in which they lived. Now the origin of that dreaming goes back well beyond 40,000, back to Kakadu almost probably, but where did it begin? It's only, remember that we've only been on this planet for 300,000 years. In the last 300,000 since we originated, we're here at 60, 70,000 with that modern expression of connection to country. And it's in that context that the longevity of the dreaming, that's what I'm trying to get at. So I asked the question, why all this geological stuff? There are two lots of the dreaming. The 300,000 years, first Africa, the recall of Galaweris Unipingo and the dreaming. The dreaming, it tells us how we came into being and in what system we must live. Now that's exactly what we've been doing scientifically. Then ask the question, can science and dreaming work together? Could Indigenous dreaming be the earliest legacy of the conscious awakening of 300,000 years? What is the relationship between Indigenous dreaming today and what happened with the very first appearance of DNA in Africa? I'm suggesting that Indigenous dreaming was initiated thousands of years ago and has continued both to Kakadu, the Mungo people, and we're exploring, trying to understand it today. That's the problem we now face. I come back to this diagram in which I'm suggesting that the dreaming between the contrast, the message between the two people, between the two schools, the two shops, trying to communicate with each other, that communication, I think, is dependent upon the Mungo people, their connection to country now as towards a unity statement that Greg, Peter and Tom Billy have challenged us, the development of a unity statement across the cultural divide. And I think that is where we go today. How to build that dialogue across the divide, where the age of reason and dreaming, the spirit of empathy, those two which appear in opposition today. The empathy on one hand, in contrast to the age of reason. So that is where I think we can the age of reason find unity with the dreaming. That's the challenge. Where here there's Kakadu, Mungo, and on the right, the age of reason. Our non-Indigenous, our 1788 arrivals, with a sense of conflict at the moment. And it's the message now towards resolution of that conflict depends upon these two coming together with a spirit of empathy with the land people healing process, where our Indigenous colleagues can combine with us so that the age of reason, the non-Indigenous, come together in a sense of spirituality, a sense of connection to country. That is the challenge we face now. That is the challenge we take on at the conclusion of this meeting. Thank you.